Piers Morgan thought he could unsettle Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, as he often does with his guests, but she calmly responded with a single line that left him speechless. The segment began like any other on his show. Bright studio lights, the intro music rolling, and a topic teased to promise controversy, race discussions, and accountability in American politics. Yet viewers were unprepared for Crockett's poise, which shifted the tone entirely and sent the moment viral. The debate was framed as bridging perspectives, but anyone familiar with Morgan's style knew it would be combative. The British broadcaster, notorious for interrupting and pressuring guests, had built his reputation on eliciting reactions. What the producers likely did not foresee was that Crockett wouldn't just withstand that pressure. She would turn it to her advantage. A sitting congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett has become known for her incisive questioning during committee hearings and her unwavering civil rights stance. Going head-to-head with someone like Morgan, who thrives on unsettling his guests, was a calculated risk. But Crockett was prepared, not to defend herself, but to lead the conversation. From the moment the split screen appeared, it was clear their interaction would be tense. Morgan opened with a loaded question, implying that some Democratic narratives on race were exaggerated and divisive. Crockett didn't flinch. Adjusting her microphone, she looked directly into the camera and asked, "Are you here for a conversation or just another soundbite?" Viewers noticed the shift immediately. There was no shouting or insults, just a measured pause and a subtle rebalancing of control. Morgan smiled, but his rhythm was disrupted. Crockett remained composed and deliberate, a stark contrast to the often chaotic energy of the show. The question of control, who would lead the discussion, was answered in those first moments. She would. The striking part was not Morgan's aggression, but its ineffectiveness. Crockett didn't shout. She dismantled assumptions. Within minutes, the power dynamic had shifted. Viewers reacted instantly, flooding live chat with comments. "She's not here to be bullied." Crockett came ready. By the first break, Crockett had established control. As the segment continued, she maintained it. The tension grew as cameras rolled into the second minute. Morgan leaned forward, eyebrows raised, delivering a loaded follow-up. "So, Congresswoman," he began, dripping with implication, "do you believe calling everything racist helps anyone, or does it just make people tune out?" Before she could finish, Morgan interjected, smirking, "Well, that's not exactly what I asked." He expected a flustered reply, but Crockett remained composed. Pausing long enough for the moment to resonate, she responded firmly, "If you ask me a question, at least let me answer it before deciding it's not what you wanted to hear." The live audience could feel the pivot. Morgan's smile faltered briefly, revealing surprise at her poise. Crockett continued, explaining clearly, "It's not about labeling everything as racist. It's about identifying systemic bias where it exists and addressing it, not ignoring it when others dismiss the topic." Her measured tone left little room for manipulation. Morgan tried again. "Systemic bias. That's a phrase often thrown around. Are you saying the entire system is rigged against Black Americans?" Crockett didn't skip a beat. "Yes, in many ways it still is. I'm not throwing words around. I live it, I legislate around it, and I confront it every time someone tries to dismiss it." Viewers reacted immediately, praising her calm confidence. She never raised her voice or gestured wildly. When Morgan attempted to redirect to vague hypotheticals about wokeness, Crockett repeatedly returned to policy, lived experience, and facts. At one point, Morgan used sarcasm. "Should we just tear everything down and start over?" Crockett leaned in slightly, her reply grounded. "We don't need to tear it down. We need to stop pretending it's fine." Her statement carried weight, not through theatrics, but honesty. Even when Morgan suggested progress over the last 50 years and advocated unity, Crockett answered without hesitation, maintaining her focus on accountability and truth. Progress doesn't erase pain, and unity without truth is merely performance. "I'm not here to make anyone comfortable. I'm here to confront reality." Even viewers who didn't fully share her political views began nodding along. There was a maturity in her delivery that made it difficult to argue with. She wasn't offering opinions. She was placing experience into context and making it clear this conversation couldn't be reduced to sound bites for ratings. By now, Piers Morgan appeared noticeably rigid. His usual tactics, interruptions, semantic games, and passive-aggressive remarks, weren't landing. Worse, they were starting to backfire. Clips of the segment were already circulating on Twitter and TikTok. Some political commentators even remarked, "Crockett is schooling Morgan live." Yet Jasmine remained unfazed. This stage is where most guests either shout back or retreat. She did neither. Instead, she stayed rooted in purpose, refusing to let his framing define the discussion. That calm resistance fueled the rising tension. Morgan was in unfamiliar territory, and viewers could sense it. Jasmine, however, was just getting started. The exchange intensified with a third interruption, which prompted Crockett's first viral line. Morgan, visibly annoyed that she wasn't taking his bait, cut her off mid-sentence, attempting what he thought was a witty deflection. "Let's not make this a lecture. This is a conversation, not a monologue." Crockett didn't flinch. Looking him directly in the eye, she responded with calm authority. "You invited me here to speak, so let me finish." Not shouted, not sarcastic. Precise and controlled. The line immediately stopped the room. Morgan blinked, leaned back, and remained silent. That single sentence wasn't just a reply. It was a boundary. She wasn't going to let him cross it again. From that moment, the energy shifted. Having already established composure, Crockett now gained control. Not just of her words, but of the pace, tone, and even Morgan's ability to dominate the conversation. Live viewers felt it. Chat boxes flooded with comments. Finally, someone tells him to stop interrupting. Crockett is in charge. Clips of the moment circulated instantly, with the line "You invited me here, let me finish" becoming a viral meme. On set, Morgan tried to recover. Of course, he muttered, gesturing for her to continue. His tone slightly guarded. He wasn't used to guests resetting the tempo. Crockett spoke with assurance. "I'm not here to make headlines or win arguments. I'm here because these conversations are often warped to serve narratives that hurt real people. And if you want a real discussion, that means giving me space to respond without being boxed in or interrupted." Her words were subtle but powerful, calling out not just Morgan, but the entire media formula built on interruptions and conflict, participating in it while flipping the script. And it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. No raised voice, no defensive gestures. She simply reclaimed the space from a personality who often relies on pushing guests into emotional reactions. Crockett's composure was disarming. Media analysts later described it as a masterclass in on-air control. Morgan attempted to shift topics to police funding and democratic rhetoric on law enforcement. "So, what's your position on defunding the police? Is that still the official stance?" he asked, edging toward confrontation. Crockett did not fall into the trap. She responded with nuance, explaining that slogans are often weaponized to distort policy discussions. "Nobody I work with is calling for lawlessness. We're advocating accountability, smarter funding, and better trained officers, not less public safety." She noted that police departments themselves often request reforms that conservatives reject. If you actually listen to the people on the ground instead of reacting to slogans, you'd see we're not far apart in wanting safer communities. Her clarity stunned even viewers expecting a shouting match. She wasn't dodging the question. She reframed it with context. Morgan, repeatedly attempting sarcasm or provocation, was met each time with facts and specifics. Crockett was now in full command. And it wasn't because she won an argument. It was because she refused to be pulled into one. That restraint, more than anything, made the moment so compelling for viewers. It was rare. A live television guest who didn't just endure the pressure but turned it to their advantage. Piers Morgan appeared defensive, not because he was attacked, but because he had lost control. Jasmine Crockett, on the other hand, remained calm, doing exactly what she came to do. Speak truth, unbothered. By the second half of the segment, it was clear this wouldn't be remembered as just another cable debate. This was Crockett's moment, and she had firmly taken control by the 10-minute mark. The usual rhythm of Piers Morgan, uncensored, had been completely disrupted. Viewers who expected chaos were witnessing something far more unsettling. Facts delivered calmly by a guest who refused to be baited. Crockett had set her boundaries and was now reinforcing her arguments with undeniable evidence. Morgan attempted to steer the conversation back into familiar ground. "You talk about systemic bias," he said, "but where's the proof that the system is still rigged against Black Americans? Are we talking feelings, or is there hard data?" Without hesitation, Jasmine leaned slightly forward and said, "Let's talk numbers." She laid it out clearly. Black Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population but nearly 40% of the prison population. That isn't coincidence. Sentencing guidelines and policing practices consistently punish one demographic more harshly than others for the same offenses. It's not about individual choices. It's systemic. Morgan attempted to counter with anecdotes about personal responsibility. Crockett responded with context. Disparities in school funding, the lasting impact of redlining maps on neighborhoods, and DOJ reports documenting racial profiling and traffic stops. "You want facts?" she said, voice steady. Let's talk about the 2016 Department of Justice investigation into Ferguson PD, or the NYPD's stop and frisk data. These aren't activist talking points. They're official government findings. You just have to read them. Morgan fell silent for a beat. It was obvious he hadn't expected her to come so thoroughly prepared. Seeing the opening, Crockett pressed further. Let's also talk about healthcare, she continued. Black women in America are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. This isn't about lifestyle or income, it's systemic neglect in the medical field, and even institutions like the CDC acknowledge it. She paused, letting her words sink in. What's striking, she added, is that the same people who scream about cancel culture or censorship when someone says, "Merry Christmas," suddenly go silent. But when we start quoting federal data about real-life inequalities, the reaction is very different. The comment sections erupted in applause. Clips spread instantly. Influencers stitched the moment into reaction videos, highlighting her composure while delivering fact after fact. Morgan attempted to deflect. But we've had a black president. We have black billionaires. Doesn't that mean we've moved past racism? Jasmine shook her head gently. Representation doesn't erase discrimination. Barack Obama didn't end racism. He just revealed how much of it still exists. When a black man leads, it exposes the work still needed. The tone of the room shifted, not because she raised her voice or personally embarrassed Morgan, but because every shallow rebuttal he offered was met with substance. Even the production crew noticed. Later, someone backstage posted, "She didn't just clap back. She came prepared with a full syllabus." Crockett's preparation wasn't for show. It was intentional, designed to move the conversation from media theatrics to issues that affect millions of lives. Every time Morgan reached for a rhetorical trick, Jasmine anchored the discussion in lived experience, research, and moral clarity. "I'm not here for applause," she said at one point. "I'm here because ignoring these facts has consequences. If we want a country that lives up to its claims, we have to confront the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." Her words weren't flashy, but they carried weight. The segment became more than a back and forth between personalities. It became a national moment. One side relied on slogans and provocation. The other brought data, context, and hard truths. Viewers stayed glued to their screens, not for spectacle, but for the rare sight of a public figure who didn't just survive an ambush-style interview but took control. By the next break, Crockett had changed the tone of the entire show. Morgan, visibly struggling to regain footing, was no longer the provocateur. He reacted, reaching for control, while Jasmine calmly continued her argument, backed by facts and the audience's attention. Something unusual was happening on Piers Morgan. Uncensored. The host, typically in command, was off balance. His usual tactics, interruptions, sarcasm, and redirection, had failed. Crockett wasn't just holding her ground. She was advancing her points with precision, one fact at a time. Sensing the shift, Morgan leaned back, forced a smile, and tried to pivot. "Let's move on," he said casually, hoping to regain control. "I want to talk about cancel culture, something I know you've criticized in the past." Jasmine didn't let him evade the issue. "We can," she replied, "but we haven't finished the conversation on systemic injustice. That's the problem with these platforms. Real issues get cut off before the point lands, just to make room for more palatable sound bites." Her tone wasn't combative. It was steady, deliberate, and that made her even harder to challenge. Morgan, who often thrived on reactive guests, seemed uncertain how to proceed. His usual tactics weren't working because Crockett refused to engage on his terms. "Okay, fair enough," Piers muttered. "Finish your point." She did, speaking deliberately and without rushing. She cited another study, this time from the Brookings Institution, on generational wealth gaps and how historical discrimination continues to affect black homeownership rates. "These aren't distant past issues," she explained. "They're present realities that shape opportunity and security for millions of families." Morgan didn't interrupt. He looked slightly impatient, fingers tapping the table, but he waited. "Congresswoman, don't you think focusing so heavily on race divides us? What about unity? Doesn't identity politics push people apart?" Jasmine blinked slowly. "Unity without honesty is just performance. You can't build trust by ignoring harm. Pretending everything is fine doesn't heal. It deepens resentment. People don't need silence. They need justice." The live chat exploded. Her phrase, "unity without honesty is just performance," quickly went viral, resonating because it addressed a truth many felt but rarely saw in mainstream media. Morgan stumbled. Well, sure, but haven't we made progress? Jasmine nodded. Yes, we've made progress. But progress doesn't erase injustice. Having running water doesn't mean you ignore the lead in the pipes. Her metaphor landed, and viewers could feel the weight. Morgan was reacting, not leading, and stumbled over his next line. I'm not denying racism exists, but it shouldn't be the only lens. Who said it's the only lens? She replied politely but firmly. That's the problem. When people bring up race, it's treated like the only topic allowed. It's not. But ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It makes the consequences worse. Morgan let out a short laugh, trying to reset the tone. You clearly have your talking points ready. Crockett leaned in slightly. No, I have experience. I live this. I legislate. I listen to constituents who've buried children, lost homes, been denied services, and still get blamed for their pain. That's not a talking point. It's real life. The statement shut him down. Even viewers who disagreed politically acknowledged she had taken control. She wasn't just surviving the interview, she was steering it. Morgan looked smaller in his own studio, fidgeting with notes, glancing off camera. He tried humor. Congresswoman, remind me never to debate you unprepared. Crockett didn't smile. I'm not here to debate you, Piers. I'm here to talk about the people who never get invited to this table. The sentence landed like a curtain drop. Whatever power Morgan had walked in with, he no longer held it. Social media amplified it instantly. Commentators, influencers, and journalists shared clips, praising her composure, command of facts, and refusal to be drawn into theatrics. Morgan wasn't just losing an argument. He was losing control of his own show. The defining moment came when Morgan tried to pivot. All right, let's park the race talk for a second. Thoughts on Biden's approval ratings? Surely we can agree he's struggling. Crockett didn't take the bait. She paused, looked directly into the camera, and delivered the line that would be quoted and shared widely. You can change the subject, but the truth doesn't move with it. No theatrics, no raised voice, just words that cut through the noise. She wasn't responding to Morgan, she was speaking to the audience, who had grown tired of distractions and wanted someone rooted in reality. Morgan muttered, well, that's a good line, but his body betrayed him, tense shoulders, darting eyes, and a loss of earlier confidence. Comment sections exploded. Clips circulated with overlays and subtitles. Journalists called it one of the most media-savvy moments of the year. Politicians outside her party praised her control of a hostile media space. Crockett didn't gloat. She continued steering the conversation back to substance. You keep trying to shift the focus, she said calmly but firmly, because reality is uncomfortable. Leadership isn't about comfort. It's about confronting what others avoid. Morgan tried to pivot to Biden again, but his rhythm was off. His jokes fell flat. The audience sensed the shift. This wasn't the usual Piers Morgan performance. Crockett had disrupted the format entirely. Traditional media took notice. Clips aired on CNN and MSNBC, with analysts discussing how media often derails conversations about race and accountability, highlighting Crockett's rare ability to remain composed while controlling the narrative. Even some conservative platforms covered the interview. While their framing leaned a certain way, they acknowledged Crockett's composure. Producers likely realized they had just aired one of the most talked-about exchanges of the week. According to a freelance editor involved in the show's cut-down package, the control room went silent after her quote. She flipped the dynamic, the editor wrote. It wasn't about race, Biden, or cancel culture. It was about honesty, and it caught everyone off guard. By the next day, the clip had topped YouTube's trending page in both the US and UK. The line appeared on T-shirts overnight. Activists used it to launch campaigns, and celebrities shared it on Instagram and stories. The phrase became shorthand for staying grounded in truth even when others tried to distract or deflect. Crockett understood the weight of her words, not in a self-congratulatory way, but with measured awareness. She never repeated the line on air. Its impact had already extended beyond the studio. Morgan tried to press on, but the momentum was gone. Every topic he raised was met with the same composed clarity from Crockett. Viewers stayed tuned to hear her next point, not his. You can change the subject, but the truth doesn't move with it, wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a statement of principle. In an era where media debates often spin in circles, Crockett drew a clear line and left standing taller than ever. Even before the show ended, the internet had taken notice. What started as a tense segment between a British broadcaster and a rising American congresswoman became a digital wildfire. Unfiltered, often chaotic live chat shifted dramatically. Viewers who expected a typical Piers takedown cheered every time Crockett spoke. Hearts and clapping emojis filled the screen. Users typed quotes from her responses in real time, turning them into instant sound bites. Top messages included, "Unity without honesty is just performance. Damn, Piers can't keep up. She came prepared. He came with vibes. Get this woman a weekly segment on Twitter." Clips of her saying, "You can change the subject, but the truth doesn't move with it," were uploaded by journalists, activist groups, and regular viewers. They were retweeted with captions like, "This is how you do it." One TikTok user wrote, "Jasmine Crockett is calmly dismantling Piers Morgan live, and he has no idea how to recover. We're witnessing history in real time." Hashtags like hashtag Crockett vs. Piers and hashtag Piers got cooked climbed US and UK Twitter trends. Creators across platforms recorded live reactions, shouting, "Oh, she did not just say that," or "He's getting schooled on his own show." Even Reddit, where political content often gets buried, featured the clip on the politics subreddit with a thread titled, "Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett teaches a masterclass on keeping your cool under pressure." Thousands of upvotes and supportive comments followed. Users noted that this wasn't about winning an argument. It was about controlling the narrative without breaking a sweat. Instagram Reels amplified the moment. Politicians, artists, and media personalities shared clips with commentary. Actress Kerry Washington posted it to her story, captioning it, "When black women lead with truth, it shakes the room." News personalities like Joy Reid and Mekhi Hassan highlighted the clip as a significant media moment. Meanwhile, the segment was still live. Morgan, likely unaware of the digital wave building, struggled to maintain control. His questions slowed, his tone shifted, and Crockett's presence disrupted not just the energy in the studio but the platform's power dynamic. According to a media blog, producers reported palpable tension in the control room. "We prepped for tough guests, but we weren't expecting her to flip the tone like that," said one anonymous staffer. News outlets published stories even before the show ended, with headlines such as, "Jasmine Crockett silences Piers Morgan with one perfect line," and "Live interview goes off script as Crockett commands the room." Crockett remained unfazed by growing attention, staying on message. She didn't pander or get distracted, which strengthened her credibility. While others might have become self-conscious going viral, she stayed composed and mission-driven. This was more than a TV moment. It became a cultural event. Viewers frustrated by superficial political discourse finally saw someone speak plainly and refuse to be rattled. By the time the credits rolled, she had earned not just admiration, but trust. Morgan, once known for catching guests off guard, became the foil in a now legendary live exchange. Crockett didn't just survive the spotlight. She redefined it. When the broadcast ended, the real effect began backstage. According to an anonymous producer, the mood was unusually quiet. Morgan reportedly walked off without engaging much with the crew. Camera operators and staff posted Instagram stories capturing Crockett walking calmly out of the studio, phone in hand, scrolling as notifications exploded. She was trending in 3 countries. Her Twitter gained 80,000 followers in 12 hours. News outlets jumped on the story. The New York Times ran a headline, "Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett redefines the live interview," praising her composure and calling her viral moment one of the most effective media appearances in recent memory. BBC World News highlighted how a Texas lawmaker stole the show from one of Britain's loudest media figures. CNN dissected her approach, noting that her lack of performance made her appearance natural and impactful. Publications like The Guardian, Vice, The Independent, Al Jazeera, and The Atlantic profiled her. Conservative media scrambled to reframe the exchange, but comments largely recognized Crockett's skill. Even Fox News hosts acknowledged she made valid points and didn't lose her cool. On social media, users discussed broader topics. Media accountability, how women, especially black women, are interrupted in televised interviews, and how Crockett had flipped the dynamic without raising her voice. TikTok creators stitched clips with personal reactions. One young woman paused the video and said, "That line goes into every meeting from now on." Within 24 hours, Crockett was invited to appear on The View, Morning Joe, and multiple podcasts. Her team released a short statement thanking supporters and reaffirming her commitment to speaking truthfully. She tweeted once that night, "I don't go on TV to go viral. I go to speak for the people who elected me, but I see y'all and I appreciate the love." That tweet received over 250,000 likes in under a day, shared widely by verified users, celebrities, journalists, and educators. Morgan posted a clip with the caption, "Lively chat with rapper and singer Jasmine Crockett, tonight's sharp lady," but comments criticized him, noting timestamps where he lost control. Merch inspired by Crockett's quotes appeared online. T-shirts, mugs, posters featuring, "Unity without honesty is just performance. You invited me here. Let me finish. And truth doesn't move with it." This was more than content. It became language people could adopt, especially those often talked over or dismissed. Crockett didn't win a debate in the traditional sense. She redefined what winning looked like. She didn't come to fight. She came with facts, grace, and presence, leaving the set with control Morgan never expected to lose. In the days following, her interview resonated across political lines, gender discussions, and international media. Major outlets analyzed her approach. The Washington Post ran a front-page analysis. "When the microphone doesn't belong to you, take it anyway," calling it a textbook example of narrative control without confrontation. Time included her line, "You can change the subject, but the truth doesn't move with it," in a roundup of the year's most powerful political statements. Scholars, journalists, and activists broke down the exchange, highlighting a shift in how women, particularly women of color, navigate hostile media spaces. Cable hosts, even those who usually avoid praising opposition politicians, nodded in approval. CNN's Anderson Cooper remarked, "It's rare to watch someone outthink a seasoned interviewer in real time and do it with this level of grace." Public opinion reflected the impact. Crockett's approval rating in her district jumped nearly 10 points in a local poll. Recognition spread across age groups. Young voters unfamiliar with her began following her on social media. Creators turned her soundbites into TikTok audio. College debate teams even used "Truth Doesn't Move with It" as a theme for practice rounds. What made the aftermath unique wasn't just praise. It was relatability. Working-class viewers, especially Black women, saw someone remain calm while being interrupted. Essence magazine wrote, "What we saw in Jasmine Crockett wasn't a politician. We saw ourselves, a co-worker repeating facts while interrupted, a teacher questioned by someone louder, a mother explaining the truth in a room that won't listen. And she didn't yell. She didn't break. She made it impossible."